All right. Welcome. A warm welcome to all of you participating in this webinar. It's 9 o'clock Dutch time and 3 o'clock in the afternoon Chinese time. So we'll start this webinar. Before we start, though, I'd like to first make a couple of announcements about this webinar. The first is that please check if you have access to the chatting function in this webinar program. Because during testing, we found that if you are an anonymous user, sometimes chatting is not enabled. If you find out that this is the case, please try to log in again using your email address, and that should solve the problem. This is important because we will be using the chat function for Q&A. So throughout these presentations, please feel free to already put your question down in the chat window, and then we'll collect them all, and then we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. Also, please keep your video and audio off. That will improve the bandwidth of our presentation, so you all have a better video quality. Yeah, we can turn you on, or you can turn yourself on again when you actually have a question at the end. But please then don't forget to turn yourself off again. Yeah, so the webinar will be in English. It's only with participants from the Dutch side, but of course, sometimes there are people in the Netherlands that don't speak Dutch, so we still do it in English. But there's no participants from the Chinese side. So let me first start with the schedule. So this is what the schedule looks like. Yeah, I'm now already busy with the introduction. My colleague Björn Ooms will tell a little bit more about policy after me. And then we'll have two participants, two presenters who are here in the room today in China, in Shanghai. The first is Arjen van der Schoot from Dutch construction company ICE. Then we have Reinout from Malenstein. He is also Dutch. He is a lawyer in China. And then as the third speaker, we have someone from the Netherlands, from our partner organization in the government, RVO, the Rijksdienst voor Ondernemend Nederland, or the Enterprise Agency of the Netherlands in English. And he will talk a little bit about instruments and subsidies for international business. And then we end with the Q&A. And as I said before, you can already put your questions down in the chat window, and we will touch upon them at the end. So I have a few more slides for the introduction. The first is just a little bit of an introduction of who we are. So what I show on this map is these are all the locations in China where the Netherlands has, the Dutch government has an office. That could be an embassy. So we have one embassy in the capital, of course, Beijing. That's the yellow one. Then we have 4 consulates in China, in Shanghai, Guangzhou, Chongqing, and one for Hong Kong and Macau in Hong Kong. Those are the 4 light blue locations in the south. But we also have 6 business support offices. They are mini consulates of sort, mainly for economic support to Dutch businesses in China, in these cities and the regions around them. And we are here in the Shanghai consulate. So just to give a little bit of background on the Shanghai consulate, this is the area that we cover from the consulate, so the resort, as we like to call it. It looks tiny on the map of China, but it's actually quite huge if you look at it from the size of the population and also the size of the economy. So it's both about 1/5 of the total of China, 1/5 of the population, and 1/5 of the economy, a little bit more even. And these 4 provinces of Jiangsu, Shanghai, Anhui, and Zhejiang, they're a lot like countries in their own right, so to say. So I just put down 4 of the countries that, in terms of population, these provinces are comparable with. So we have different departments at the consulate, and in this webinar, there's involvement of 3: the economic department, the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water. They have an office here, and I myself am from the Netherlands Innovation Network. As you can see, we have slightly different focuses. but we often work together on the general goal of promoting Dutch business interests, as is the case for this webinar. So to get into the content a little bit more, what I'd like to start with is basically to make you enthusiastic about China. So yeah, I just want to highlight with a couple of numbers the size of China, the scale of China, of both the market but also of the industry. And then after that, the speakers that we have, they can talk a little bit more about the limitations that there, of course, also are to doing business in China. But I think it's good before we start with that, to sort of try to impress you a bit with with what's going on here, and make you aware of the opportunities that there are here, which you should, I think, always keep in the back of your mind when doing business in China, and when you meet challenges here. So it's a talk that I often give about how big China is as a country and how it's almost a continent in itself, and how big the market is. But I think especially for construction and demolition waste, that is especially true, even more so than in other sectors. So if you look at how much construction and demolition waste is generated here, it's 3 billion tons per year. That's what is expected for 2020 this year. And that is actually 3 times the amount of the whole of the European Union. So huge amounts of construction waste. And only 10% of this is actually reused or recycled. And in the Netherlands, I think we're at about 95% already. So yeah, they really have a long way to go here still. And that is a problem that is recognized at a high level. So the State Council is one of the highest levels, highest organs in the state, and they've been supporting change here since 2019. One of the ways by which they do that is a zero waste city pilot. And my colleague Björn will talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And we have 3 cities in our resort in the Yangtze River Delta: Shaoxing, Dongling, and Xuzhou. And 2 of them will also be here next week for our second webinar with Chinese participants. Yeah, for green building, a very similar situation. So really, the construction sector in China is just a very huge sector. 30 billion square meters of floor space will be constructed in 2020. That's half of the world. So half of the new buildings are constructed in China. It's as simple as that. Of course, a lot of that has not been green in the past, but green building has definitely become a high priority. So 50% of new buildings should be green in 2020, certified green. Of course, you know what is certified. It might not always be 100% the same as in Europe, but the Chinese government definitely also recognizes. So the number I show here, the growth from 5 to 28% of the construction sector by 2030. That's a number that a research agency that put forth, which is actually was given this task by the Chinese government. And of course, we have the zero waste cities who are also active in this, but definitely also other cities in its region, such as Suzhou, Shanghai, and Shanghai itself, and Wuxi. So this is the short introduction. I hope to make you a little bit enthusiastic about how massive China is. Just a few words about the follow-up. So we have a second webinar. I think most of you will be aware of this. It's next week, same time, 3 o'clock Dutch time. 3 o'clock Chinese time, 9 o'clock Dutch time. Tuesday, 1 September. So we have received all the pitches. There will be Dutch companies can have a 5-minute pitch. They have been translated and subtitled. So we don't have place and time anymore to add in different pitches. But if you don't have a pitch, you can still participate in the webinar and ask your questions and listen to the presentations from the Chinese side. Of course, we had an innovation mission planned for 2020. I spoke with some of you about this, some of the participants today about this before. But of course, we had a pandemic happen. COVID-19 has made this impossible for this year. So China is currently not accessible for business travel. But we are still looking for an innovation mission next year. An innovation mission is basically something like a trade mission, which I assume many of you will be familiar with or will have a concept of what it means. It's basically a week traveling through China, visiting different counterparts, but then focused very much on innovation. So the plan is that this will happen in 2021. Could be later in the year, perhaps. Depends a little bit on how developments go with the pandemic. And depending on that, also, if that takes too long, we could be looking at other digital events this year or next year. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, this is my introduction. I would like to give the floor now to my colleague Björn Ooms, who will talk a little bit more about the policy side of the zero waste cities and of green building. Björn Ooms. Björn, please take the floor.
Good morning to everyone tuning in from the Netherlands, and good afternoon to everyone here in China. Very glad that you're all here with us for this webinar on construction and demolition waste and green building. My name is Björn Ooms. I'm a Senior Policy Officer at the Economic Affairs Department of the Consulate General here in Shanghai, where I, amongst others, work on circular economy and sustainable urban development. Today I will talk a little bit about the Zero Waste City pilot project, green building, and the policy framework against which these plans have emerged. As you probably know, China has long parted with the concept of a planned economy, but the government is still very much in charge of steering the economy. A valuable tool in achieving this is the concept of 5-year plans. 5-year plans serve as blueprints for the economic development of China and usually focus on certain themes or areas. And although they are usually very vague in wording, they usually give a clear indication in what direction the leadership of China thinks that China's economy and society should develop. Now, we are currently in the 13th 5-year plan, which runs from 2016 through 2020, which is at the end of this year. And this has been dubbed the most sustainable 5-year plan ever for its clear focus on sustainable development across pretty much almost all sectors. Now, why is this important? Well, in an economy or a market where the government is such an important factor and plays such an important role, getting your goals and your KPIs in line with those of the government can sometimes make your life and your business a little bit easier. It was against these developments that I just mentioned that the Chinese government or the State Council issued this Zero Waste City pilot project. This project aims to develop a blueprint for national waste management by developing best practices in 11 cities and 5 districts across China. Now, in the service area of the Consulate General of the Netherlands here in Shanghai, which is Jiangsu Province, Zhejiang Province, and Anhui Province, and the Shanghai municipal area, we have 3 zero waste cities, which is Tongling in Anhui Province, Shaoxing in Zhejiang Province, and Xuzhou in Jiangsu Province. Now, due to their different industrial backgrounds, these cities have put different focuses on their zero waste implementation plans, but construction waste is an important point for the plans of all these 3 cities. And the reason, quite simply, is that proper processing and recycling of construction waste is a problem that most Chinese cities cope with. The Chinese or the construction boom in China began about 40 years ago, and buildings built in the early period of this boom are being demolished at this moment, and China is looking for ways to retain and reuse these building materials. Now, in terms of the Zero Waste City pilot project, it means that pilot cities have been giving a list of key performance indicators, some mandatory and some elective. For example, one of the KPIs states that the cities will have to build 2 to 3 new construction waste recycling facilities. This is a mandatory KPI that all cities will have to carry out. Another KPI, an elective KPI, is that cities should invest in at least one facility to treat construction sludge. Again, this is quite fake, but it gives the cities more leeway to interpret key KPIs, to shop around a little bit in technologies to find the best solution for their own cities and for their own situation. And finally, aiming to reduce the production of construction waste, zero waste cities also have an elective KPI that stipulates that at least 30% of new construction projects must be built using prefab construction methods. Now, this pilot runs until December 2020, after which a team chaired by the Ministry of Ecology and Environment will evaluate the results, with the outcomes expected around March 21. Now, although the runtime of the pilot is relatively short, the implementation plans of each city mention goals that exceed the 2020 deadline. For example, in the city of Shaoxing, concrete goals have been set up to until 2025, whereas in another city, Tongling, plans run until 2026. Well, this pilot project is expected to bring about a major multiplying effect. Successful initiatives will earn a recommendation by the ministry and can be included in a national blueprint, generating business opportunities far beyond this pilot. Moving on to green building. Sustainable ways of building and green building are high on the Chinese agenda as well. China introduced the first green building standard in 2006, and a new standard has been introduced a year ago in August 2019. The green standard comes in 3 tiers, 3 stars, which with 1 star for buildings that or projects that meet the basic requirements, and 3 stars for buildings or projects that have the highest score. The standard also grants 2 different certifications. The first is a design label, which pretty much is a pre-certification that allows a project or building to market it or to be branded as a green building. And there's an operation building, which is granted when a building meets the energy performance as projected within a year. I think I'm pretty much out of time already, so I'll wrap it up. In conclusion, the development of increasing sustainability across different sectors with a clear focus on waste management is deeply rooted in Chinese policy. And it's also for that reason that the COVID pandemic has had little to no impact on the plans, goals, and ambitions of China in this area. So it's also expected that there will be a strong focus on environmentalism and sustainable waste disposal and management in the upcoming 14th five-year plan, which will be presented at the end of this year. Chinese goals and KPIs in finding more sustainable ways of building and dealing with construction waste and demolition waste pretty much almost perfectly align with Dutch expertise and know-how. Therefore, we believe there's a solid base for Dutch companies wishing to explore the Chinese markets. This was my story, my presentation for today. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them during the Q&A session at the end of this webinar. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. So feel free to ask your questions. Well, now already or later in the during the Q&A. You can put them forward in the chat. So let's go on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Reinout from Malenstein. Reinout from Malenstein is a lawyer at HFG Lawyers, but at the same time he also he works for the Marx as a secretary, and he also works for the European Chamber of Commerce. They have an IPR working group, and he's a vice chair of that. So He knows a lot about issues related to IPR, but also everything surrounding it in China, trade secrets and all that. And he will tell us a little bit about that. Reinout, please give you the floor.
Thanks, David. Thank you very much. Pleasure to speak today for you. Pleasure to speak here at the Netherlands Consulate in Shanghai. Today I want to talk with you a little about intellectual property law and really about how can you protect yourself. And you've often heard the stories in the media, in the Chinese media, in the Dutch media, in the Western media that the laws are really not that good or that enforcement is a problem. Actually, the law and the enforcement can work very well in China. So that's something that I will introduce to you today, how to do that. Now, very shortly about, let's see where we are in the slides, there we go, about my firm. We're a law firm, HFG, that is mainly specialized in intellectual property. So we have more than 60 lawyers, also with a scientific background, that can help companies to register IP and also to enforce it on the ground. But that's not why you're here. You're here for the real story about how to protect yourself in China. And for that, you need to know that there's, like I said, a few problems in the Western thinking that China doesn't have IP systems. They do have IP laws. The problem really starts when companies use Dutch law or other European laws to protect themselves in China. It doesn't work that way because every country has their own national system. Thus, if you apply Dutch law, you might end up not being protected at all. So what are the biggest misunderstandings that I usually see Dutch companies have? That is that a foreign trademark, for example, so a Dutch trademark, protects you in China. It doesn't work like that. You want to have protection in China, that means you need to protect your trademark for the Chinese market. Furthermore, the Chinese have somehow made their trademark system a little bit more complicated. Where in the EU you apply for a certain class, China has made it into subclasses. So that's a huge other problem. Then the question whether or not you want to have a Chinese language trademark and if that is good for your protection is another thing to discuss within your company. There is the issue of design rights that we have in the European Union, which in China falls under the patent law, which also causes more problems. And then there is the issue of copyright, how you can use that in China with or without registration. If we look at enforcement, there's problems there compared to the Netherlands, for example. If you want to put forward proof at a court, you need to notarize the evidence. And this is very different from the Netherlands, where you as the lawyer yourself can take a screenshot of evidence and then put it forward. And furthermore, like notarized and legalized POA is needed for action. And so these are some of the big changes and challenges that I will discuss more in depth further in this presentation. Now, if you look at the main IP rights, so the rights of trademark, the rights of patent, and of design rights, the basic rule in China is register, register, register. You register them, you can obtain these rights. You don't register them, you will not have these rights. And so often if you read in Financial Times that a company is losing in China because they got copied, often what really is the case is that unfortunately that company didn't register their rights, and as a result they got into trouble. So no registration means no protection. Sometimes companies ask me, okay, I'm not in China yet, so do I need protection for my trademark or patent, yes or no? The answer is actually quite simple, because if you want the world to be overflooded with various copies of your products, then you don't need to have registration in China. But if you don't want that to happen, so if you actually want to enforce and shut down factories in China, you need to have those rights. Because otherwise, if you start enforcing in China, you want to get rid of the problem, authorities will say, well, you don't have a right, so I can't help you. Or if you do the alternative way, which means enforcing in European countries, it will cost you a lot of money, which you don't have to spend if you attack it right at the source in China. So what you really need, and I will try to use this microphone, is a baseball bat with your right to start smacking these producers in China. And that is Chinese IP. So IP 101, what do you need? At first, you do need a trademark. So a trademark that can be any distinctive sign that sees on, for example, your name of your company or of your product. It could be a shape of a product, could be a number, could be a 3D symbol, could be a color, could even be a sound. So these are things you can register as a trademark, and then you get 10 years of protection for it, which is a monopoly right. And we all love the little game of Monopoly. This way you can get a monopoly right to be the only one to use this symbol or name for your company or product, and no one else can get it that way. However, there's a big problem, which is most of the time already, unfortunately, your trademark will be registered already by a Chinese company. And then the question is, what can you do? Well, if there's a business relationship between your company and that company, or any kind of relationship, you can get it back. Also, if that company has copied, for example, your logo, that logo could be protected by copyright, and thus you can use your prior right of copyright to get it back. Nowadays, because there's a new trademark law under which Chinese government will try to help companies a little bit more to get their trademarks back. Also, if there's many filings of other trademarks by other parties, you can also try to get it back. If you're an Apple, if you're Coca-Cola, your trademark is well known, you can get it back, but unfortunately, that's not for many of you the case. And if someone has filed it in bad faith or has no intention to use the trademark at all, you can also get it back. So these are generally the ways to get it back. Now, then it comes the next question: how can I file a trademark? You can file it with Chinese trademark agents or internationally through BIPO. You register it with the China Intellectual Property Office. Registration, if you do it the local way, is faster. That's now most likely to be around 5 months registration time. But really important is to watch out for the clauses and the subclauses. And so where in Europe you register your rights for one class, let's say the class for milk products, for example, you get all these different food products. But in China, they've divided into separate subclasses. So you really need to see what you want to use, and then separately in one application, tick all these boxes for the subclasses. If you don't do that, you will not get the protection in China. So this requires a little bit of reading about the subclasses and then just checking the boxes. So what we usually do is, if a client is interested in a certain class, we send a filing proposal with what we believe are the main subclasses, and then the client can just tick the box what they want. Then the question comes, do you want a Chinese language name? And most companies say, I have a very good English name, so I don't need a Chinese name. One of those companies that said that was Pfizer. They're quite known in the market for the drug that's called Viagra. Most people will know this drug, and some people might use this drug. The problem Viagra had in China was that, and the company owns it, Pfizer, said like, okay, Chinese people will say Viagra. However, in a conversation in China, the market doesn't say, hey, Kumar, Viagra. That's not going to happen because Viagra is too hard to pronounce for Chinese people. So instead, the market calls Viagra Weige, which means big brother. Now, a very smart pharmaceutical company in China started registering this name and also put these tablets on the market. And that was very bad news for Pfizer because they were trying to sell Viagra to the Chinese, but the Chinese preferred buying this Weige medicine because that was the name they knew. So that will create a very seriously bad situation. Created it for Pfizer and will create it also for you possibly in the future if you don't make a Chinese name. So highly recommend to create a Chinese name for the Chinese market so that people know what you're talking about. Now, how can you do that? There's certain ways to do that. For example, Apple uses a direct translation, so Pingguo is an apple in China, so that's one way to do it. Then you have the translation of the sound For example, Maidanlao is McDonald's in China, so sound is quite similar. And then there's the favorite way for me, at least, to do it, which is combining the sound and also combining the meaning. So, delicious happiness is one of those most amazing examples of a good name. It's probably not allowed in the Netherlands for a sugar drink to call it delicious happiness, but in China, these names were allowed, and that is something to really think about. Create a Chinese name for your business. So that's about trademarks. Now, if we move over to patents, to inventions, you see that China has a different mechanism for patents than the Netherlands. Because in the Netherlands, there's only one patent called the invention patent. In China, there's 3 patents. So you have the invention patent, which is the same as the Rijksoctrooi, and then you have the utility model patent and also the design patent. Now, what is the difference? So invention and utility model patents are both for inventions that are new, inventive, and industrially applicable. Difference is that for the utility model patent, just less inventiveness is required, and there's no substantive examination. So Chinese companies massively have applied for that, and then use these utility model patents to get rid of foreign competitors. So I can always really encourage foreign companies to also start applying for these utility model patents, and you can even apply for it at the same time. You apply for the invention patents and utility model patents at the same time. Utility model patent you get a lot faster, mostly within half a year or 1 year, and the invention patent you get around 3 to 5 years. And the moment you get the invention patent, you declare immediately the utility model patent invalid. So that's a really fast, good way to immediately start being able to enforce your rights. And then there's the design patents for shapes that are creative and new. And so this is what we have in the Netherlands, which is called a European design right, actually. The Chinese have put it under the patent law, which in reality has led to a lot of problems, which I will tell you about more later. But first, patents, how to apply for it. Apply for it, CNIPA. You get 10 years protection for utility model patents and design patent, and 20 years for the invention patent. You need a Chinese patent agent to apply for it. Really watch out for the translation. Don't let a translation bureau do the translation of your patent, because the scope of the patent is decided by the claims of the patent. So if you don't let that do by someone trained in the field, it will not come out well, I can guarantee you that. And the most important thing here is that keep your patent safe and secret. If you show it to anyone or you publicly put it anywhere, then it cannot be applied for patent protection anymore. And that is actually where most companies really get into trouble. And so you have 2 buses here. Left bus is a German bus from the MAN company. Bus on the right is from Neoplan Zhongda, a Chinese bus. And the real problem is there wasn't really a problem in this case. Actually, the Germans won this case because they had a design patent registered. So they won big winnings at the court in Beijing. The whole world started acknowledging that China has finally a good patent system where foreign companies can win. So it all looks fine. So design patent law works in China until the Chinese sent a team to Germany to look if there's any publication available before the design patent was applied for regarding the bus, where this bus was shown. And actually the marketing team of this German company had 2 months before this bus was applied for a patent, put this in Bus Actuel and Bus Magazine. So, long story short, the court invalidated the patent, and these buses are still driving everywhere in China. So, long story short, really do get patent protection, and before you get patent protection, keep your patent, keep your innovation secret and safe. Have good measures to protect them, which is something I will address with trade secrets later in this presentation. Copyright is a great other way to also protect your rights. When people think of copyright, they think about George R.R. Martin, like complicated long books, etc. Well, actually, copyright is very handy for any company in the world, because every company has a website. Website is protected by copyright. Every company has instruction manuals, has packaging. All these things are copyright protected. So that means that if what the Chinese do is often like just copy paste these things from your website or from your instruction manual, you can actually register this with the Chinese Copyright Bureau and get a copyright certificate, and that will make sure that no one can copy you. So this is a really good way to get some extra protection. Unfortunately, we have seen a lot more infringements of trademarks and copyright happening on e-commerce platforms in China, which also means that for you, it's really important to monitor these various e-commerce channels to see if there's any infringements of your company there. And then if you find that infringement, you can either take it down. So you can ask, for example, Alibaba to take it down, but you could also use it for future proof to get rid of a big fish, some company that really infringes your rights a lot. Now, in order to do that, you actually need to ask a Chinese notary public to notarize this evidence in China so you can use it for litigation or administrative enforcement. And that's often a step that most companies forget. So instead of immediately trying to contact the other person, first get your evidence notarized and then contact them, because then if worse comes to worse, you can win a lawsuit and that way get compensation for your losses. Now, trade secrets is the last part of IP that I want to discuss, which is basically anything that could become a copyright or a patent or a trademark or anything else that is valuable to your company that your competitor doesn't know about. Now, all these things are things that every company has: marketing strategies, client lists, processes, etc. But in China, you need to know that there are ways to protect it, and those ways are through physical measures, technological measures, and contractual measures. Means physical measures: I come to your company, there's someone at reception stopping me, and I cannot just go into your company and start looking at things. Technological measures means, for example, computers, etc., need to have password protection, etc., encryption, all those things. And then the important one, if you come to China and you're actually going to do business here, before you tell your trade secrets to the other party, you have an NDA that the other party will sign. Without this NDA, you will be giving your trade secrets away freely, and then they can't be protected anymore. So this is really something you have to watch out for. If you do that well, which was the case for Eli Lilly, an American pharmaceutical company, then you can start an action to ask a judge to prohibit someone from disclosing. So that was in their case the case when a key researcher started downloading all these files and threatened to quit and go to another company. That way you can tell this person, okay, you're leaving, but if you give this to someone else, the judge will say that you have to pay an extreme amount of money, etc., etc. If worse comes to worse and you need to enforce your rights, step one, get the notarized evidence of the infringement. Once you have that, you can do all these other options as administrative enforcement, going to the courts, doing criminal persecution, negotiating, or doing custom protection. But the most important thing really is to first get that evidence notarized. Thank you very much, and I will give back the floor to David. Have a great day.
Yes, thanks. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Reinout. So always it's interesting to hear, you know, how this works and what possibilities there still are to protect yourself in China. But a lot of things you really should take care of. So let me introduce our third speaker. That's Emiel Mulder. He's a business development coach at RVO. RVO is de Rijksdienst voor Ondernemen Nederland in Dutch, and in English we call it Enterprise Netherlands, I think is one of the names to describe it. And he will tell a little bit more about all the support you can actually get from the Dutch government when you do international business, because it turns out there are quite a lot of instruments available for helping SMEs and even bigger companies. So please go ahead.
Good afternoon, my name is Emiel Mulder. I work as a business development coach for the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, or RVO as we say in Dutch. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the instruments and subsidies available for Dutch companies and knowledge institutions. I'll tell a little bit about country reports, business partner scan, starters for international business, partners for international business, demonstration, feasibility and investment preparation projects, and the Dutch trade and investment funds. Well, first of all, on the country reports, let's say you're a company and you want to export abroad, but you don't know to which country to go yet. Well, we can help you with some of that. We can compare 3 countries or 3 regions within China for you, for your products, which might be most interesting. How can we help? Well, we can try to locate the correct branch organizations. We can help you finding the product requirements, export regulations, tell you something about the business culture in the country or region. So tell a little bit about the do's and don'ts, and help you find potential subsidy and financing possibilities. Well, you can compare a maximum of 3 countries or 3 regions in China and ask 5 questions, a maximum of 5 questions per region or country. Then we have the business partner scan. For the business partner scan, we can help you find different partners. Think about distributors, producers, agents, dealers, etc. We ask you to do an intake with us, with one of our colleagues at RVO. We will ask you to provide some information about your company, about your product or service, your track records abroad, and then our postal network in China. We have 11 offices in China. Will help you find some relevant contacts, potential business partners. We have the light version, in which we will provide you with cold contacts. This will cost 200 euros, and we can provide you also with an extensive version. And in this case, we will introduce your company and product or service to the potential business partners. And if they are interested, we will give you this feedback and you can contact them. For the extensive business partner scan, we ask a fee of 500 euros. Then we have the starters for international business. Starters for international business is meant for small and medium enterprises. We have 6 vouchers available. First of all, the coachings voucher, second, the mission voucher, the knowledge voucher, the individual trade fair voucher, market entry voucher, and since the end of June recently, the Kickstart voucher due to the Corona outbreak. First of all, the coachings voucher, I will tell a little bit about all of them. Coachings voucher, it's a bit similar to the country report. Let's say you want to go abroad, but you don't know to which market yet. Via this voucher, you can get some assistance of a very experienced export manager in this region or country. He or she help you via in 3 or 5 conversations, appointments. He or she will help you set up a business case, do some research on the possibilities and risks in the target countries or country if you have one. Then we have the mission voucher. Well, next to the public organized trade missions, there are also trade missions organized by private organizations. They are usually a bit more expensive than the public organized trade missions. Via this mission voucher, you can get a discount in order to participate in one of these private organized trade missions. There are some conditions to this, obviously, but you can find them on our website. Then we have the knowledge voucher. You can also get an external advisor if you have, for instance, some legal issues or fiscal issues or some challenges in the foreign market and you don't know the regulations over there. We can help you with this voucher and you can cover some of the costs for legal advice or fiscal advice in the country. Then we have the individual trade fairs voucher. So if you want to participate in an international trade fair, you can also get a voucher for this. Obviously, it's important that the international trade fair is open for all international visitors. Then we have the market entry voucher. The market entry voucher is meant for entrepreneurs who need advice from external experts in a certain market. He or she can introduce you at local networks. He can also help you with establishing an office in the target country. And then we have the Kickstart voucher. Well, due to the coronavirus, a lot of companies have been hit in their international activities. And together with an external advisor, you can better map the consequences of your company doing business in a foreign market, and hope to reduce the challenges and the risk you have. Well, there are a lot of conditions, obviously, on these for these vouchers, but you can find them all on our website, www.rvo.nl, or you can ask me some questions during the Q&A session. Then we have the Partners for International Business. Well, the Partners for International Business, it's a program to launch and promote clusters in top sectors on complex and emerging markets. The aim is to better position Dutch companies and knowledge institutions for the long term, reducing trade barriers. And we do this because in some markets and sectors, it's very hard for an individual Dutch company or knowledge institution to position themselves. So together, usually you're stronger, and you can make a change solution for a certain challenge in a foreign market. Well, for who is this Partners for International Business available? It's available for a group of companies, at least 5 companies or knowledge institutions. And the companies are in the lead for a PIB, so they need to identify a market opportunity. They also appoint a coordinator who represents them during this whole traject. It's also important to know that the PIB, it's not a subsidy instrument. It's a public-private cooperation. And the public side helps to position the business through a tailor-made covenant. That's what the PIB consists of a 2 to 3 years action plan. And the modules which we offer are, and how we help to better position the Dutch companies via trade fairs, organizing trade missions, seminars, help appointing a liaison, discussing with the liaison in the target market how best to position the Dutch cluster in the market. Then we have the demonstration, feasibility studies, and investments preparation projects. Well, for a demonstration project, an entrepreneur or a knowledge institution, it's also possible, by the way, since the 1st of January 2020 for consortia to participate in a demonstration project. They can demonstrate a technology, product, or service in one of the target countries. The aim is to show local stakeholders in the target country that the technology, product, or service works in that country. It's effective and it's commercially viable in the country. The technology that you show, or your goods or products, should be new on the target market. You can get a subsidy up to 200,000 euros, and it can only be to a maximum of 50% of the total project cost. Well, with a feasibility study, you can get a higher chance on export orders. The feasibility study is meant for to show to an interested foreign partner who is interested in your product or service, to show that your product or service is technically and commercially viable for them to invest in and to get to their country. For the feasibility study, you will do a research, which will lead to a business plan or project plan. And via this business plan, your partner abroad who is interested in your service or product can take a decision whether or not they want to invest in this. And for the investments preparation projects, it's more focused on your own company to see whether it's technically or legally or commercially possible for you to export your product or service to a certain country. So the big difference between a feasibility study and an investment preparation study is that for the feasibility study, you already have a interested foreign partner, potential foreign partner interested in your product or service. And for investment preparation projects, you have to do research within your own company or knowledge institution whether or not it's viable to go to another country with your projects. Then we have the Dutch Trade and Investment Funds. Well, it consists of three different topics: investments, imports, and exports. If you want to invest in a certain country, let's say you want to set up business over there, but you have some troubles getting the loans from the private banks or guarantees. This Dutch Trade and Investment Fund can help you with that. Also, if you want to import goods from a foreign market and you have troubles getting the right finances for your local supplier in the target country, then also via this Dutch Trade and Investment Fund, we can help you with some loans and guarantees. And this also applies for capital goods. If you want to export your capital goods, there is also export financing possibilities. Well, there are several other instruments available at RVO and subsidies. They can be found on the website. If you have any questions, please ask me during the Q&A or check our website for conditions about the instruments and subsidies I just mentioned. You can check www.rvo.nl. There's also an English version available. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
So let's see if I'm back. Yes. Yes, thank you, Emiel. It's very good to know what's possible from the Dutch government side. Also, as you saw, there's some instruments like a PIB, which require a group of Dutch companies and even research institutes to apply for this together. So yeah, that's why also it's good to have a couple of you together and also pay attention to some of the other companies that are interested in China in our next webinar next week. Yeah, because there might be opportunities to team up with different organizations. Yeah, something that's maybe good to mention also is that we have the China Business Week also in a few weeks. So that's the 15th till the 18th of September. There will also be a breakout session there on zero waste, also for China. So that's a good other event perhaps to be involved in. That's also wholly digital. So I guess now is the time that we go on to Q&A. We already received some questions in the Q&A, but please also go ahead if you have any other questions about any of our previous three speakers. We have two present here in the room, and Emiel is with us through the internet. He's also in the Netherlands, and then we can talk about them here. Maybe to start with, I'd like to ask a question myself to Arjen. So we have a new webinar next week. That's also for a Chinese audience. So we will have three Chinese speakers there also. You will also be a part of that yourself. Can you tell a little bit about how something like that, because it's still a digital event, how you can perhaps use that or best view that in a sort of a business development sector?
I would assume that people don't speak English well, so have stimulating photos and maybe some video, And I think you'll make a translation, right, David?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's also important. Yeah. So I think it's important to just stress 1 or 2 points, and if people remember those 1 or 2 points, it will be counted as a success. That would be my advice.
Okay, thanks. So we also had some questions come in. So maybe let me first have one. I have it here on my phone that I can actually check what the wording was. So we had a question by Violetta for Reinout. I'd like to start with that one. So she asked if you have any experience with blockchain-based notarization and blockchain-based evidence of copyright registration.
Okay, so the issue of blockchain is a very good question, and I'm very pleased to say that the internet courts in China have started already accepting blockchain evidence without the need for notarization, etc. So that is something that more and more in China you can expect to see. At the same time, however, the notarization requirement will still officially stay there. So it's waiting for a official communication that in the future blockchain will officially be accepted in the evidence chain fully. So it's moving in the right direction, but we're not there yet completely. Especially as a foreign company, the notarization requirement still very much applies because the cases we've seen so far with the internet courts and blockchain and evidence has seen on Chinese parties. So far, I'd say the notarization requirement is still there, but we can expect in the future that it will be changed. Then with regards to copyright, copyright is the only IP right actually that you have the moment you create, for example, a drawing or a manual or a photo. So if I grab my iPhone now and I start taking a picture, I immediately have the copyright on that picture. Then the question of like how you're going to prove that, yes, in the future blockchain might be able to help you there, but for now I'd say with your most important copyrights, register them separately in China, because what a copyright registration in China does, even though it's not necessary to have it, but what it does, it changes around, so it flips the burden of proof. So instead of you having to prove that you are the copyright owner, the certificate already shows that, so you don't have to do anything more. And actually now the other party that you say is infringing your copyright has to prove that you're not the copyright owner, which will be hard because you already have the certificates. And it's very easy to obtain this certificate because it's just a formality check. Are the documents you provided all meeting the requirements? They will not really look if a work is original and met other qualifications like that. I'd like to give the floor back to David to see if there's any more questions.
Yes, thanks. One question that we would like to ask to Emiel. Perhaps you can explain a little bit more about so I just mentioned the China Business Week in September, but I didn't explain a lot more about it. I also don't know everything about it. Emiel knows a lot more about that. So maybe he can tell a little bit more about what that entails and what it could also mean for some of our other participants. And Emiel's calling in, so perhaps it takes some time to get in to speak.
Yeah, do you hear me already?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you.
Thank
you, David. Yeah, we're organizing the China Business Week. It's the 7th edition actually this year. David already mentioned it's organized from the 15th until the 18th of September. Normally it's a physical event, but this year it's fully digital. Only some speakers will be present in the studio live from The Hague. The China Business Week consists of 3 parts each day. First, we start with a one-on-one conversation, so matchmaking with our China network. 46 colleagues of the China network, so from all our MBSOs, consulates, and the embassy are available for these matchmaking conversations. So it doesn't matter what kind of question you have. Do you want to start a new? Do you want to start an office in China? If you want to ask some questions about the energy market, if you have some questions about agro-food, horticulture, or well, about this topic on a zero waste and construction waste, you can register for the China Business Week, and please mention what kind of questions you have. We also have plenary sessions each day in which some entrepreneurs will tell their stories about doing business in China. We have some people from different provinces who will share their what they can do for Dutch companies and why and how they organize trade missions, and why it is relevant to join these trade missions. And every day we have two breakout sessions on different topics. And on the Tuesday, so that's the first day, the 15th of September, we will start with a zero waste webinar, and we also have a hydrogen webinar. And on the other days, there will be two breakout sessions each day as well on different topics. So if you have any questions on that or questions on how to register, please feel free to ask. We should go live this afternoon. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Emiel. Very useful. We will also be a part, by the way, of the China Business Week of parts of it. So yeah, we'll meet again then, Emiel. Yeah, so some questions that were still there. We still didn't touch upon the first question that was asked, which was about WeChat. So that was asked to Arjen. Yeah, the question is, how do you get to the amount of followers on WeChat that you have? Yeah, maybe I also like to add a little bit one thought that I had, which is, yeah, what is the use of WeChat when you're when WeChat is a really broad medium and you're trying to approach really specific people in an industry? How do you see that? Thanks.
So the best advice I received ever was make your marketing about something bigger than your own product. So we sell piling equipment. The people interested in our niche product of piling equipment, there's not so many, but people interested in foundation, there's many people interested in foundation. So we chose as a group focus, or we said group foundation construction. So this brings in a lot more potential readers. Then we also started early. We started maybe 7 years ago. So we built the reputation slowly. And one thing you should also understand about Chinese habits is that people don't really use email. So fax is out also. So most things are communicated with WeChat. So the dissemination of information, most of it goes through WeChat. We also send contracts. We send photos, videos. Everything goes through WeChat. And we also grew in the beginning with WeChat advertising. So we bought targeted advertising for people in our demographic, 35 to 50-year-old men with an interest in construction. And this is how we grew the followers also very quickly. But now the advertising became expensive, and we have our base, so we stopped the advertising, and we went from 28,000 to less than 5,000. So it's also about the reading rate more than about the number of followers.
Thanks. Thanks, Arjen. Yeah, that's very interesting to hear. Of course, we being in China also use WeChat yeah, every day basically for almost everything. So yeah, very important. Yes, there was another question that came in. This question by Bart van den Boert to Reinout. So let me see. It seems a question. Perhaps if you, I will first give the floor to Reinout, and if you think Bart, if you think you want to give some more clarification after that, you can always speak up, basically. So let me read the question. I have it here, I think. Or perhaps I can best read it from outside of the screen. That will be quicker. Yes, the question is, Bart van den Boert, his company has a patent registered in China. However,
this is good, but however, a patent is also like a good description of how the system works, of course. So it makes it easy to copy. What would you advise as a next step once now they have the patent? So should they show the patent to everybody, or should they only use it when it is needed in case of infringement? That's the question.
Thanks, Bart, for this question. It really depends on how you want to be on the market. And you can show the patent obviously to anyone you want to show it to, including competitors, because you have the monopoly right. You have the patent for either 20 years if it's an invention patent, or 10 years for design and utility model patent. So you can show it to others and put it even on your website to say like, hey, this is our company, we're the best because we have this patent. And so that could be one way to do that. Obviously, if someone else sees the patent, they know they can't do exactly what's in the patent. What they might feel is your patent might not be valid because it's not new, not inventive, or not industrially applicable. So they might challenge the patent and try to get rid of it. But then at the same time, the patent was granted, and you might lose it as a result, but that wouldn't really matter because then it was never a real patent, so to speak. And so with certain products, you have the obligation, for example, if you want to sell on Alibaba, to put the patent there so they know that you're the real company behind it. So in that way, like showing the patent might be very helpful, for example, to sell your product on Alibaba and other e-commerce websites. Naturally, you can also not show it to anyone, so you have less chance that others read it. At the same time, it's public information, and competitors in the field would be able to find it anyways through the public patents database. So it might be best to just have a one-on-one talk to see what your product is, etc., and what are the chances that your patent might be invalidated in order to come up with a strategy to put it out there or not. More important for now, I think, is to ask yourself the question, do you have the right trademarks registered? Because you want the patent to be linked by goodwill to your company. And so ideally, when people see the patent, or they know about a certain product that works in a certain way, or a machine that works in a certain way, that they think about your company. So I think a good next step is you have the patent, get the trademark. So get your name both in English and Chinese registered, get your logo registered, and then also look at trade secret protection within your organization. Because if you have a patent, you're a company that comes up with inventions, which means that there might be more inventions in the future. And for that, it will be essential, if you're dealing with China, that you protect your trade secrets that might grow out to become patents or other valuable information, that you protect it in your organization, but also that you have a dedicated IP manager within your firm that tells employees the power of patents and IP and trade secret protection, that you have to protect it in a certain way in order to eventually be able to get another patent. And so disclosure is often a big problem for companies as yours. And this is going to sound very unfriendly, but most of the time it's your own employees, like head of research and development or the marketing team, that have the most chance of losing a trade secret and thus losing a patent or other valuable IP, because they're so excited to share information. So I think for you at this time, it's really important to get a trademark, but also have a very clear trade secret protection within your firm to make sure that any future IP is well protected. And if you want to talk more about like the patent strategy, we can set up a call and we can talk a little bit further about the strategy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Reinout. I hope that answers the question. So you're welcome to contact Reinout, of course. If you have any small questions, you can also still put them in the chat. Because I think apart from that, these were all the questions that were brought up. So if you still have a burning question and you have not asked it yet, now is your chance. Let me just talk a little bit in the meanwhile about next week. So next week we'll have a bigger webinar with Chinese participants also. So we'll have 3 Chinese speakers who will share a little bit about their about what's happening in China. We will have someone from Suzhou government. That's one of the zero waste cities. We'll have someone from Nanjing, one of the big cities here, who's a researcher and at the same time also involved in some of the circular economy associations. And we have a platform here in Shanghai that is the government supported platform that is specifically has the task to bring together Chinese and also foreign suppliers. So that's really a matchmaker. So it would be quite useful. We will send you the link for that still. We haven't done that yet, but it will be the same time between 9 and 11:30 next week, Tuesday, the 1st of September. So thank you. I'm looking at my colleague to see if there were any questions. Otherwise, I think we can actually finish the webinar a little bit early.
When will they receive the link?
So the link for the second webinar will be sent at the latest 24 hours in advance, I would say, and perhaps we can even send it earlier, but it depends a little bit. Getting a webinar between China and the Netherlands, as we found out, is quite a challenge. So all the software that works normal in Europe might not work the same way in China and the other way around. So that requires some work. But we're confident we can at least send the link 24 hours in advance. So I think we've had all the questions, right? Yes. So then we end the webinar a little bit earlier, but that's I think no one of you will be sad about that. You have some more time during the day, and I hope to see a lot of you next week again for our second webinar. Thank you.